So welcome, our beloved and brilliant colleague, Aline. I so appreciate your consistent leadership and solidarity. And as always at Setsi, we begin all things by acknowledging and giving thanks to our creator. We acknowledge all the original stewards of the various lands we're on. We acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We acknowledge all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. So, Aline, can you please share a bit about your remarkable work and your background with our listeners and our viewers?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much, Victor. Thanks for this invitation, and what a beautiful opening. My name is Aline Nizigama. The last name is from Burundi, so I am originally from Burundi, East Africa, and that's where my last name is from. And I'm a CEO at Ywca Canada as of 10 months now, 11 months, so still brand new. And I just wanted to acknowledge first that I'm joining you from Treaty 13 territory in Toronto. It is a land that was traditionally two of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, amongst many others. And so I'm really grateful and privileged to be able to live and thrive on this land, and absolutely acknowledge the labor of our ancestors as well that came here from the African continent, brought here through different circumstances. And I one of the new waves of people that came here. And I'm just really looking forward to have this conversation with you. And yeah, spend a really good Friday morning with you.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much, fam. And I appreciate your consistent leadership. You make our ancestors proud. You represent us well. So I appreciate you indeed. So my next question is, what's inspiring you right now in your work? What has you curious, or what's keeping you up at nights?
Oh boy, a lot. It's a lot, as you know, just being in this space as a leader of the largest and oldest women serving organization. So we are the largest provider of housing for women fleeing violence specifically, and also the second largest provider of childcare services up here in Canada, and just an array of other services, whether it's employment, just empowering women and girls and gender diverse people. So we're constantly expanding that definition of gender because we know it's a social construct, and it really is also spatially contextualized as well. So because it's different how gender gets interpreted in different locations and cultures and over time. And so being in this space and being new to this, it's there's a lot of learning to do. There's a lot of relationships to be built. And so it's always all of the above, just really turning in my head at all times. So I'm so what keeps me inspired, I think was the question. Like what am I so I'm quite inspired by, so I'm a very hopeful and optimistic person myself. And so even as we look at the really dire state of the world and the economy and the environment and all of the world, the wars and that really suffering that's happening in the world, including on my homeland, in Africa, there's several conflicts that are happening, and in the Middle East, and it's just there's a lot happening that's affecting us wherever we are. We are a very globalized and open world now than we've ever been. And so I'm always thinking about what is, what gives us hope in all of those negative and really dystopian things that we are witnessing. And to me, it's just that as human, most of us are always trying to do better. Most of us are just out here trying to be our better selves, including myself. So I'm inspired. I'm a mom of two little ones. I'm inspired by, what can I do to improve, to enhance this world that we're living, so that I can pass it on to the next generation in a better shape than I found it. And so I'm inspired by how can I continue to infuse optimism in my children and other people's children and the youth, really, to make things um, but much more better for them in terms of living conditions, well-being, socioeconomic standing, and just thriving in society. And so that gives me hope to see that there's a younger generation coming through, and it's not just us who are working in different spaces to enhance life. And so, yeah, I'm also that being in a space where I'm in I think we say a sandwich generation where I'm taking care of my own mother as well and seeing her, you know, later ages and years be have the privilege to be able to take care of her and make sure that that part of her life is also graciously being taken care of. That's also, to me, it's something that I don't take for granted. I know it's not for many people who have that opportunity to do that. So I love being in this space where I'm taking care of the youth and the older generation. She's our I call her my elder in chief because she's my advisor in everything. And I just want to take all the grace that she has and the patience that she has. She's also my inspiration, but hopefully we get to talk about that as the interview advances.
That's absolutely beautiful and remarkable. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
thank you so much for your candor, your transparency, and your deep authenticity. I so appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you too. To you too, Victor.
Indeed.
I've seen the other interviews you've done. It's always a great and upbeat conversation, and it's just a privilege to be part of this.
Ashe, ashe. So my next question, what challenges and barriers do you face in your work, and what are some of the approaches you take to overcome them? I know you just mentioned the beautiful journey that your mother has and the fact that you have an in-house advisor. Well, what are the ways that you overcome some of these challenges and barriers that you face in your work? Because it is hard work.
It is hard work, absolutely, and I'm cognizant of the fact that this space, being part of a leadership circle in this nonprofit sector, looking like I do, has not always been a given. So I'm cognizant that this representation to me matters, and the challenges that that people that look like me, whether it's like Black women, racialized women, Indigenous women, or other gender diverse folks as well in those groups. The challenges that we face historically to get to these places don't just disappear. So we're still facing a lot of discrimination. I'm thankful that in my current role, it's really the conversations are being elevated to see how we can add more security and safety for people to step into these roles and feel like you have a safety net. You have people who got your back. So the challenges still have to do with resources most of the time in the nonprofit sector here to do the work that we're doing, which we are taking care of the most vulnerable communities, individuals in our society, whether it's women fleeing violence, people living in poverty, children who are just feeling unsafe, youth, empowering people so that they can economically have the same equitable opportunities across the board, and just continue to center equity and anti-racism and truth and reconciliation. Like those are deep, complex issues that don't just disappear because we're starting to have conversations. So those challenges do show up, but because of the lack of resources to adequately address those, is these you have to remember that it's been like hundreds of years, centuries when these problems developed and were neglected. And so it's going to take either a huge injection of resources upfront or a long time for us to get out of this rut. So the challenge that has to do with resources is real. We're facing unprecedented levels of homelessness and mental health crises across the globe, across Canada for sure. And so that's those challenges, we see them every day. And so we're always advocating for continuing to see not only that we need affordable, decent, safe housing, but that we need to go a step further and look at the intersectional, the gendered aspect of those needs. And so that's where we step in and talk about our experience in providing services to people who are in those specific needs. And so those challenges are really we see that across the sector. And so resources, having people who are advocating to have more funding, changing the narrative and changing the approaches in philanthropy. I know we're talking more about infusing more trust towards organizations that are providing the services. And so not just providing the resources, but giving it with trust, and letting those people who are in those roles lead because they understand the issues at a deeper level. And so, yeah, those are some of them. But I think like we're not in a unique position when we are sharing that. Absolutely.
No, I couldn't agree more. One of my elders, my sister, I should say, for I get in trouble, Lisa Austin, the founder of the Ashe Foundation for Black Community, she always tells me, Victor, intersectionality matters. Intersectionality matters. And I think a lot of times when we think of intersectionality, we have a limited scope. We don't think about social location, lived experience, orientation. So there's so many, and intersectionality deeply matters in terms of trying to tackle some of these pervasive, intractable problems. And then in terms of the broader sectors, some of the insights that you gain, like I know I was recently talking to my colleague, Dan Clement, the CEO of United Way, or even recently Sharon Avery, the
Yeah.
CEO of the Toronto Community Foundation. And across the nation, donations are down. So even the wealthiest feel vulnerable and aren't donating as much as they used to. And volunteerism is down across the country. So it's putting folks that are already vulnerable in more crisis because there's a lack of giving happening right now, which is unfortunate because we live in such an abundant world, and I hate scarcity thinking. And more importantly,
Me too.
volunteerism is down. Like folks are trading their time for money and having second jobs and side hustles where they can no longer participate in civic duties and civic engagement the way they would in times that were less challenging. So we have to find ways to pull together, and I appreciate just your leadership and all the sentiments of your remarks. So my next question is, how do you feel about the future of this work? Like a lot of people are hopeful, optimistic, some are pessimistic, but how do you feel about the future of your work?
I feel like, first of all, being part of an organization that's been around for 150 years is reassurance enough that there's that longevity. It's also sad to a degree that we haven't solved gender equity in that much time, and we continue to see things actually regress. Rights that we have acquired can be taken away, right? In a blink, in a second. You blink and then it's gone. And so the future to me is something that has to be fought for constantly. And even if you achieve a place where you feel like this is a huge milestone, like we are achieving, let's take an example. We're getting closer to universal childcare, which is something's a gender equity issue. How are we then going to make sure that that right and that program that we are securing maintains itself, because it's always at the whim of political currents and who's in power, who's in charge. Do you have really good ambassadors and advocates that will not only just make sure that these gains continue to be maintained, but that when we're talking about intersectionality and the equity pieces are also built in, because that's not a given. Again, those things have to be named so that they can be addressed, and you have to have people who get it in those decision making circles. And so to us in this line of work that we do, it's about making sure that we have that representation in the decision making circles. So the future of this work depends on that, continuing to have that our best interests represented well. And where we're talking, and I'd like to tease things apart. I think we really do have to do a lot more and faster. For example, to address the challenges linked to truth and reconciliation towards Indigenous peoples here in Canada. It's just not unacceptable. Like the levels at which we're working, and at the dire conditions that communities are living in, the levels of distress. Just like we should just stop everything we're doing and say like, what can we do? And we're talking about not just addressing the calls to action that came from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Not just we took it further. There's a report talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women, for example. that has hundreds of recommendations and calls to action, calls to justice. And then we're now talking about economic reconciliation. You know, all these things have to come now. Yesterday, they should have been in place. And so I'm cognizant, being in this space, that solidarity for not just for Black communities and racialized communities also means that, to understand what the steward of the lands on which we are going through, because those struggles are alike. We're talking about decolonizing our spaces, decolonizing our approaches, and that's the same struggle, right? Or that across the board. And then we're talking about social justice. It's like, with the solidarity amongst all the groups that that are looking to have equity could be strengthened, and this is something that I'm committed to doing. We could go so much further, and so that future for us could be so much brighter. Again, it's avoiding that scarcity mindset, not saying, if there's more for you, there's less for me. No, that's just not how it works. It's there are enough resources for all of us, right? It's the greed that takes us out of that, or it's the gatekeeping that that keeps us away from our truly achieving uh, societal shifts. And so, to me, the future looks bright. Like, the future looks bright, and we see that. And I believe in humanity, but it's like, as we look at, like, take for example the issue of racism. There's there's an author I've been reading that is like shifting my thinking around how do we get past. Of course, we are in the, let's name things so that we can address them. And her name is Isabel Wilkinson. She's an American author. You know her? Yeah, she wrote the warmth of others' sons. And there's a podcast I was listening where she was talking about racism, and there's just what kinds of analogies can help us look at racism as like a system of caste. Like, it's actually how the beginning of thinking of ourselves as different, and how that was codified, and how in we are obligated to name things as they are, to identify ourselves in the differentiations that have happened, that were imposed on us, because we have to work in those frameworks to be able to address them and then move beyond them. But her thinking around, moving beyond just looking at these different groups and looking at our humanity, looking at those shared struggles that have to do with socioeconomics, for example, where the differences of color of the skin can sometimes, of course, they still play a role, but we need to move beyond thinking of ourselves as these segmented groups. After we've addressed them, after we've established that people understand what we're going through and how we're living these things, how do we move beyond, towards more like, we're the same species, really. We're the same species as human. And so I would love to live at a time where we're talking in those terms, where we feel like our needs have been addressed, our history, our contributions have been recognized, we're being treated as equal. And then now let's evolve as a species. And then, and so it's like, I love to think in those cosmic terms. I'm a big astrophysics buff, and I just love to consume a lot of the Neil deGrasse Tyson's tidbits on how tiny we are in this universe, and but also how grandiose we are as humans who are part of the same materials that make up the universe. Now I'm gonna get all wooey, but it's true though. It is true. And so the future to me is cosmically grand, and I want to be part of the bright lights that we get to see in those in those in that universe, really.
You paint a picture that gives me hope for my remarkable sons and daughters. And yeah, I
Yes.
couldn't agree more. I think that's we need more, not just of that optimism, but of that species level thinking. And recognizing that we're not the only species on the planet. So a lot of times
No.
it's
Yeah.
humanity, we think about like this our planet, like and not realizing that we're stewards of land, we're stewards of water. We're supposed to be interdependent with the flora and fauna on the planet.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love that, those sentiments, and yeah, just your brilliance. Yeah, thank you for sharing all that. I give thanks. So my second
Yeah.
last question: what is your ultimate goal, and what does success look like and feel like to you and your colleagues?
It's the $1 billion question. It's success to me, again, it looks like a more equitable world where we have is there's a trend towards widening gaps in terms of like income inequality, and you can see that the global south and north sort of differentials, and then you intersect that with all kinds of different other factors that make it so that there's still the gaps of inequity are now moving in the right direction, right? Sometimes, and on many indicators. And so to me, success looks like a world where I'm not afraid to go out on the street, me as a woman, first of all, me as a black woman, first of all, and second of all, and then me as whoever I choose to identify as. I can go outside and not be afraid for my safety, not be afraid that I'm going to be raped, and then I'm going to be afraid to report that to a police person who's not going to listen to me or believe me. And I don't have to have strategies as to how I protect myself on the street. By the way, that's moved on the online space as well, where we see a lot of hate and violence, and so harassment, gender based, but also hate on all kinds of isms. Whether it's like Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, anti-Black racism. It's across the board. It's now been facilitated by tech, and so to me, it's about being and feeling safe, not just in the physical world at home, in my own home, on the street, in public space, at work, but also in this virtual world that we are now very much engaging with. And it's scary. Like, I have two little kids. I have to go to great lengths to make sure you know, they're not ending up in harmful spaces with harmful content. And it is everywhere. It's on YouTube, it's on TikTok, it's on Instagram, it's on X and slash Twitter. It's everywhere. So how do we embrace these new developments and these new spaces where we are engaging and expressing ourselves, but make sure that that's safe for every single person? We're not even talking about, I know another element that we tend to forget about, inequity is accessibility. People with like different disabilities, right, that may be physical or sort of hidden. And how are we making sure that everyone has equitable access, which not it's not equal. It's equitable recognizes that you need different resources assigned to you depending on where you're starting from. What are your circumstances of life? And so success to me looks like more people are feeling like they belong, and we are safe. And I think from that, everything else is possible. Everything else is possible. I can then choose to be who I want to be. I can yeah, I can take care of myself and take care of people that I love, and take care of the land, like you were saying, take care of the environment, because it's like the what are the prerequisites to feeling like you belong somewhere. And so that's what success would look like to me. It would look like we're starting to really be very serious about the environment, because everything what we hear and see, we're not good, not good. It's bleak out there. and the fact that the world is very much still governed by very tiny circles of people who we haven't um, cultivated kinds of leadership that think about equity in the ways you and I are thinking about that. And so success would look like to me that those who have the best interest of people, of the environment, and of the economy are now in the driving seats of our political institutions. And so and I think really, I think that that's achievable. I think that that world is very much possible, and we just have to continue to remind people that we have that in us. We are capable of that much of good, as much as we are capable of evil and harm. But how do we cultivate one and suppress the other? And so it's yeah, we got to be showing up in different spaces to be able to address all these issues at the same time, all at once.
That's absolutely beautiful. Sign me up for that world, please.
Let's
And
go, let's go.
if you have a moment, write it down. I'd love to read that book. Well, and hopefully it'll be a nonfiction. Yeah.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know. I have a dream to write a children's book.
Okay.
I have a little bit of creativity in my background. My dad was an artist and also a political person, but he always was a creative. And so this is one aspect of my own thriving that I would love to put out in the universe and say, let me do this. So I would love to illustrate a children's book that talks about some of these things that are that I care about and I'm passionate about, and draw and illustrate it myself. So I've said it, you've heard it here on
It's
on
in the
this
ether, and
podcast.
I'll hold you accountable. Yeah. I'm gonna check in
Next
around.
time we meet,
Yes,
I would
yes.
love to do that. Yeah, and and speaking about that, I'm also thinking again about my mother, who thinking about how she started. So these gender equity issues didn't just pop up for me. It was how I was brought up, and seeing her be engaged in the community back home in Burundi, and being one of the first women who did a lot of things for her community, and who actually totally blazed the trails by starting business models that other people then were able to replicate, and just doing that is non-assuming self, and then we were able to thrive because of her struggles and her sacrifice. And so success to me would also look like something where making my mother proud of that legacy, right? And I think she told me she's pretty proud right now.
We all
So
are. We all are. You
yeah.
represent us well. You make our ancestors proud. So it's not just
Oh,
her, not just her that's proud. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
So my last question, do you have any closing thoughts or calls to action for our listeners and our viewers?
Okay. Yay, let's get engaged. Let's not stay idle. I think, but also in doing so, remember that we are not alone. And that's, what we're after. It's not just, I think I started off this interview by saying that we are always trying to do better as individuals, but to really achieve the kinds of seismic changes that we need to see, the shifts, the societal shifts to a better world, it's like it requires us to to work together, right? And so get engaged. And what does it take we're talking about declining levels of volunteerism, for example, here. Why is it so? And to me, volunteering was one of the best ways. As a newcomer, I first immigrated to the US and then came to Canada, and volunteering was one of the best ways for me to just know what's happening, to meet people, to break isolation. And so get engaged, even if that means just find a cause and then give your time, and then see, because you gain so much in that giving. And so that reciprocity to me is really important for people to get aware of what are the issues and how are we addressing them. Engagement, citizenry, voting, get out to vote when you have the chance to do that, right? Because we know many people don't have that chance across the world. And especially the younger people. So I'm really looking forward for younger people, the Gen Z, the millennials, in like taking take up space and start driving this sinking ship so that we can actually start to float and go towards more calmer seas, right? And so engagement, taking up space, and speaking up and advocating and supporting organizations like ours that are trying to shift things around. And so there are different opportunities to do that. Just don't stay idle while you remember to rest. I'm always saying this. I believe, and I also took part in the hustle culture, but rest, because that's also necessary. We're not out here to just also work ourselves to the graves. So I think when you're in that balance where you're giving to the community, you're engaged, whatever the cause is, and then you're taking time to yourself and to reflect and to enjoy your fruit, the fruit of your labor. That's a beautiful world as well, and I want to help contribute to creating, but also uh enjoy and take, and be able to take in. And so that's my parting words. And I hope yeah, because we're talking about disengagement a lot in terms of the youth feeling disenfranchised in social media. It can be pretty evil in some of the messagings we're receiving on the different platforms. But I think we need to continue to ask ourselves how we are creating worlds where we are inviting younger people in to to be able, because I don't always, there's sometimes we talk about empowering people so they can lead, but I believe that leadership is already there. We just have to like let it be, like just get out of the way and then just let it be. And so that's how I feel like we need to do for younger people to really see themselves as being in the driving seat of the different initiatives that we are doing, because that's the future, that's the hope that we have. And I, for one, will be doing what I can to make sure I get out of the way. I create opportunities so that the younger people can lead, and then the rest will fall into place.
That's absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much as a practitioner, as a thought leader.
Mhm.
I so give thanks for your authenticity, your transparency, your humility, and your visionary leadership. I definitely want to live in the world that's you've painted in this conversation. And I appreciate your call to action. It's beautiful, and it's been a remarkable conversation. And as always at Setsi, we close the way we began by giving thanks and acknowledging our creator, by giving thanks and acknowledging the original stewards, the various lands we're on. We give thanks and acknowledge all our ancestors, all those who toiled without compassion or compensation. We give thanks to all our elders and community stalwarts whose shoulders we stand on as we build, share, and learn together for our collective liberation and sovereignty. Thank you so much, Aline, for all that you do for so many and all that you will continue to do for our ascendants. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Victor. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.